This is Python Turtle Graphics Lesson 3. So here are today's goals. So originally we are going to do a homework showcase. Unfortunately, because this is online, we will not be able to do that, but I'm sure you guys did many fun and cool projects. Then we're going to talk about more information about for loops, then spirals, then gradients, and finally your homework for today. So first off, here's some more information about for loops. So how do computers count? So unlike you and me, where we start counting from 1, like 1, 2, 3, 4, computers actually start counting from 0. So in this case, it would be 0, 1, 2. And more specifically, in this case, it's for I in range 3. And this 3 both represents how many times this entire loop is going to iterate, but also one more than the maximum value that the thing is going to count to. And what I mean by that is that in this case, the number is 3. So this action, bob.forward 100 and bob.left 120, is going to iterate 1, 2, 3 times. However, the way computers count is starting from 0. So even though this says 3 here, the maximum value that it's going to count to is actually going to be 2. It's going to count 0, 1, 2. And this will apply if you wrote 2 here. It would iterate 2 times, but it would only count 0, 1. If you put 1 here, it would iterate 1 time, but it would only count 0. And so this is more like specifics on it. So basically the count is going to be stored in this I variable here. So in this case, for I in range 3, this I variable is going to go 0, 1, 2. It's going to go 3 times, but it's going to start counting from 0. And then each time, if you want to see the value, you could print I. So for example, let's just mock run this for a second. So it's for I in range 3. So the first off, it's going to be 0. So if you do print I, it's going to be print 0. Then you run it a second time. Now it's going to go from 0 to 1. So when you print I, it's going to be 1. And finally, the third and last time, I is going to count to 2. 1 less than this variable, and you get 2. So given this, try writing a for loop where the looping variable goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you may pause the video. Alright, so here's an example code. So basically, I did for I in range 5, and then print I. And the reason why it is 5 is because, as we can see here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that is 5 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 numbers. But beyond that, it's because this maximum value here is 1 less than this number right here, 4. And so when we print this out, it's going to start counting from 0, and it's going to go to 4, which is 1 less than this variable. As we can see here, that's what we get. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, we're going to talk about spirals. And we're going to expand on how to use I. So first off, here's kind of a review from last week, where we used for I in range 6, then bob.forward 100, then bob.left 60, in order to draw this hexagon. However, if we want to draw a spiral, we're actually going to have to use the iterating variable. In this case, for the hexagon spiral, we're doing for I in range 99, then bob.forward I instead of 100, and then keeping bob.left 60. Now this I makes it more interesting because, as we talked about before, I will start from 0 and then go to 1 less than this number right here. So it's going to go from 0 to 99 minus 1, which is 98. So Bob will actually move further and further each time, because the first time Bob is only going to move 0. Then Bob is going to move 1. Then Bob is going to move 2. And it's going to go all the way until Bob moves 98. And so as we can see here, that's why it goes from this teeny little thing right here all the way until it's huge lines. And that's how you create the spiral. But the key thing here is the hexagon angle actually doesn't change, because we're still trying to draw a hexagon at the end of the day, just in spiral form. So we will keep this angle. Now, given this information, try drawing a square spiral or octagon spiral. And you may pause the video. Alright. So here's the first example of a square spiral. And the only thing that actually changes here is the angle. The spiral in this case, or the value of I in range, is still 99. And we're still doing bob dot forward I, just like here. Obviously, I added a bob dot speed 0 in order to kind of teleport and speed up the process. But if you didn't include it, it's totally okay. And obviously, bob dot left 90 is the only change, because we're trying to draw a square, not a hexagon. We have to change the angle value to 90. Here's an octagon example. So once again, for I in range 99 and bob dot forward I are completely the same. Bob dot speed 0 is optional. And once again, the only thing that changes is the angle. And obviously the angle is going to be 180 degrees minus the actual value of each angle of the shape. In this case, because each angle of an octagon is 135 degrees, we will have to turn left by 180 minus 135, which is 45 degrees. Alright, given all this information, try drawing a spider web. You may pause the video. Alright, so here's my example. Obviously the lines aren't perfect, but this is a general way of how you could draw a spider web. So in this case, what I did here was use the hexagon spiral, the hexagon spiral from previously, right here. And then I started drawing the lines of the spider web. Obviously, these lines, using this code right here. And for the specifics, what I did is I did for I in range 12, so I could draw 12 of these lines. And then I did T dot forward 90 to go from the center outwards, then T dot backward 90 to go back to the center, and then T dot right 30 to start drawing the next line. And I did this for 12 times in order to get this kind of spider web effect. And obviously T dot speed 0 here to make the process faster, and T dot pen color using the RGB values of orange. Obviously that is optional, you don't necessarily have to do that, but I just tried to copy this picture right here. Alright, next we're going to be talking about gradients. So this is kind of the gradient illusion, where it looks like it goes from, a series of colors, like this looks all black and then purple and then pink, and just suddenly goes all the way to yellow, in patches. But in reality, each and every single one of these lines is actually one color, and it's gradually changing upwards or downwards, depending on the RGB value you set. And that's the cool thing about gradients. So first, let's go to the first step of drawing a gradient, and that is to draw a block. And so in this case, this is a simple, block here that is only the color black. And what happens here is we iterate for I in range 256. Now, in this code specifically, 256 is not necessarily crucial, but it is going to be crucial in the following examples. And I'll explain that later. So first up is going to be bob dot forward 100. And so what that does is it goes from the center outwards, 100. Then bob dot backward 100 is going to go from here back to the center. Then bob.right 90 is going to turn the turtle 90 degrees. Bob.forward 1 is going to move it down just a smidge. Then bob.left 90 is going to reorient it back into position to draw the next line. And obviously there is uneven patterns in a display problem, so you have to increase line width to fix it. So here's the code. Obviously in this case, if you want to, you could go bob.width 2 in order to get rid of this display problem. And so in specifics, we have bob.speed 0, once again, in order to speed up the process. We have bob.width 2 in order to get rid of the display problem. And in this code right here to actually draw the gradient, which was explained before. Now here's how we actually draw a color gradient. In this case, we're trying to transition from black to red. In this case, the first time we loop through it, I is going to be 0. Because obviously the looping variable is going to start counting from 0. And the color is going to be 0, 0, 0. But once this iterates a second time, it's going to be 1. And now the color is going to be 1, 0, 0. Third time we loop it, it's going to be 2. And so now it's going to be 2, 0, 0. And now here's where this number right here is important. Because in RGB values, as we talked about before, the maximum value for each individual RG and B is going to be 255. And as we talked about before, this number is going to be 1 more than the maximum value. And since this is 256, the maximum value we're going to get is 255, which is just within range of RGB values. And more importantly, because we're trying to transition from black to red, and red's color is 25500, this is made even more important. So as talked about before, what's going to happen is that for each iteration, this first R value is going to continuously increase from 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way until 256 minus 1, or 255, to get the color 25500. So in specifics, what's going to happen is that each line here is going to gradually increase in R value. So this first line right here is going to be 0, 0, 0, which is black. And then it's going to be 1, 0, 0, a little less black, a little less black, a little more red, a little more red, until finally we get 25500, color of red. And once again, this code right here, to actually draw the block, is the exact same as above. And here's the code running, just in case you're interested. All right. So next, try transitioning between colors. From red to blue, or from blue to orange. And you can pause the video. All right. So here's the first example, from red to blue. Now in this case, I made it so it would cover the entire screen instead of just a small portion of it, but if you did just a small portion, that is completely fine. And so in this case, we're transitioning from the RGB values of 25500 to 00255, which 25500 is going to be the RGB values of red, and 00255 is going to be the RGB values of blue. So here's the specifics of the code. Bob.speed 0 is going to make it so the process draws faster. Bob.width 2 is going to be the width lines to mitigate display problems. Bob.go to negative 200, 200 is actually so it could teleport or move from the center all the way to the top left corner, so that we can have this effect here. Now the transitioning of colors is a little bit harder than from black to red because you actually have to change 2 of the RGB values. In this case, it's going to be the first one, the R value, and then the B value, because we're trying to go from red to blue. So once again, for iron range 256, because once again, 256 is one more than the maximum value of RGB values. And specifics here is that we're going to start decrementing from 255.00. We're going to start decrementing the R value so that we can get to 0. We can get from 255 when it's first starting off to 0 at the end. This middle value will not change because from red to blue, the G value does not change, so we will not change it. And then for the B value, we actually want to increase that, because from red to blue, it goes from 0 to 255. And so what happens here is as we iterate, as this entire for loop iterates, counting from 0 to 1 to 2, it's going to go from 255.00 to 254.01, then 253.03 or 02, all the way until 00255. And then bob.forward400 here is going to be moving from left to right. And it covers the entire screen because the width is obviously 400. Then bob.go to negative 200, 200 minus 1 is to just go from this top port all the way down. And here's a second example from blue to orange. Now, and we're using light blue in this case instead of 00225 blue because it makes an easier transition from light blue to orange. In this case, bob.speed 0 is the same as before. Bob.width 2 is also the same. Bob.go to negative 200, 200 is also the same, as we're trying to go from the center all the way to the top left corner. In this case, we're transitioning from 0, 155, 255 to 255, 155, 0. So this is actually going to be the opposite of what we did previously. Previously, what we did is we started decrementing the first R value from 255 down to 0, and this B value from 0 incrementing up to 255 to get from red to blue. However, from light blue to orange, what we have to do is the opposite. We have to increment this first I value from 0 to 255, and this B value from 255 down to 0. And once again, in this case, the G value is not changing. Once again, so our for iron range is going to be 256, because that is one more than 255, which is the maximum value that we need to transition. And what happens here is that since we're incrementing the R value and decrementing the 255 value, we start from 0, 155, 255 in the first line up here, and we start incrementing R, decrementing B to go from 0, 155, 255 to 1, 155, 254, all the way down to 255, 155, 0, which is this orange value. And once again, bob.forward 400 is to cover the entire screen, and bob.go to negative 200, 200 minus 1 is to just start going down. And here's your homework, which is to draw anything with at least one gradient and at least one spiral. An idea is drawing a spider web in front of a sunset.